Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and reaching your full potential. Today's sponsor is Well Traveled. This time of year, we're always on the go. With all the activities, stress, and travel, it's easy to feel tired and run down. Maybe you're feeling that way right now. Give your immune system a natural boost with Well Traveled, a drink mix made with plant-based, clinically proven ingredients and no added sugar. It's a better alternative to emergency and airborne. Just open a packet, mix with water, and enjoy. Right now, you can save 25% by using the code ALLSTAR at checkout on their website. Visit gowelltraveled.com/discount/allstar to grab your 25% discount. Again, that's gowelltraveled.com/discount/allstar. Stay well on the go with Well Traveled. Today, our guest is Brandon Neal. Brandon is a former college football player and now is a current high school football coach. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor and privilege to be here. Appreciate you for having me. And on top of that as well, I'm also a big avid salesperson and leader in the insurance industry as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually going to say if you could just start by introducing yourself a little bit more fully and kind of give us a little bit of background on your career in football, both as a player and now as a coach. And then if you want to kind of talk about what else you've got going on in your life right now as well, too, that would be great.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So first off, obviously, it's been a long process. The reason why I inputted the insurance thing, so that's a huge part of my story, as we'll get to, obviously. But yeah, I came from Michigan, grew up, born and raised just outside of Detroit, Michigan, about 30 minutes north of Detroit, Michigan. But I played my college football days at Adrian College, which is a Division III in Michigan out of the MIAA conference. So at that point, I got recruited out of high school to be a nickelback or a safety defensive back at the college level, Division III. We'll get more probably into the Division III and kind of how that ball was. But from there, I played 4 years, got a chance to meet great people. Obviously, smaller school, so got great education with it as well. And then fast forward these last almost 10 years, which is crazy. Been out of school for 10 years. But these last 10 years, gotten really heavily deep into my career focus. And then over the last few years of my career, I've actually gotten a chance to start coaching high school ball. First started coaching in Michigan, now out here in Southern California, San Diego, coaching at Hoover High School, which obviously is a D5, D4 high school, just up the road actually from where we're at. And yeah, that's how my coaching career has kind of gotten rolling a bit more out here in one of the biggest football markets in the country. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Let me go back a step here as far as kind of asking you what first started your football journey. Like, did your dad play football? Did you just kind of stumble into it? Like, what made you first passionate about football? Because obviously you're very passionate about it for you to have played probably peewee, high school, 4 years of college, and now you're coaching. So obviously you're very passionate about football. What was it that first started that journey for you? Man, my father played, so it's in the blood. I would say football, being an athlete, just loving sports, loving competition. It's in our bloodline, right? My father played through college at Northern Michigan University. Got a chance to play with a lot of great people. His coach was Steve Mariucci, who had a long stint in the NFL as a coach and all that good stuff. And I was an analyst for NFL Network and whatnot. So I got a chance to have that growing up. And my dad always pushed me and my brother to not, just be football players, but obviously be strong young men growing up that had a discipline to work hard at something. And football just happened to kind of be our avenue that my brother and I both really pursued heavily. My brother then also played college football at a D2 level down at Tiffin University in Ohio. And so just watching all that through the years and being surrounded by a friend group that always played football and being in a pretty big football community, that's kind of what shaped it. I remember being about 4 years old in Southfield, Michigan, where I originally grew up before I moved to Troy, Michigan. I'd be at my brother's Little League practices. He was probably 7, 8 years old, and his Little League team, the freshman or JV level team that he was on, they went like 10-0. They went undefeated, unscored on. And this is at age 8 or 9. Not one opponent scored a point on them all the way through the championship game. And so just watching that, I remember being on the side practice field in my little Green Bay Packer or Detroit Lion Halloween costume type of football uniform. And I'd be doing my own little practice on the side of theirs. So from 4 years old, I kind of already knew that I love being out here, getting tackled in the mud, being out in the cold and rainy weather, doing the sprints, doing bear crawls with all the kids that are older with me. Just seeing all that really was like, this is like this team sport, like this football culture it's competitive, it's fun, it's fast, coaches pulling your face mask, spitting it's just that type of intensity. I think I embraced it at such a young age. And that was, I got it from my dad and passed through all the different coaches and then seeing it so many different perspectives. I think that's where it kind of kicked off at such a young age, seeing it when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old.
Okay. So it sounds like football has just like kind of been in your blood. So your dad played college, you said? He didn't play. Did he play professionally?
No, just college.
Okay. So he played college, and then you had an older brother who kind of started off on a really good team. He was probably really good himself, I would have to imagine, if you're on a team that goes unscored on and undefeated.
Yes,
and you were just kind of at the game on the sideline wearing your Green Bay Packers uniform, you said. Yeah. So
I was a huge Brett Favre fan for some odd reason
right.
growing up. Like, that was my dog. Brett
well,
Favre
he was, yeah. I mean, he's a very polarizing figure for a lot of different reasons, but he was very popular during his playing time for sure. Yeah. And so you were just on the sideline and you kind of saw that firsthand. And you were kind of doing your own thing, like probably playing with the other little kids, tackling each other or whatever. And so from a very young age, you developed like an intrinsic value and a motivation to play football. It was fun for you. You liked the competition. And so it sounds like that has really inspired you throughout your whole career up until now, even the point that you're coaching football.
Of course. Yeah, and I think because I didn't always had a big family type of atmosphere for me, because at that point my brother played. This is like seeing this at 4. This is like I think those ages where everything has a big influence on you and how your next chapters will go at that age. And so seeing it, you had obviously my brother playing, and he was a starter. So I mean, he was getting good playing time, and he was playing with a lot of good talent. Right? He ended up on his team. I think fast forward, obviously when they became adults, he had like 6 or 7 D1 players ended up being on that team. One ended up winning a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. His last Super Bowl, caught his last pass, Benny Fowler. They were all on the same team together. So you knew he just had really good talent. So for me, that was like the first thing. Then the second thing, it had my whole family with it because my dad was the special teams coach on that Little League team. I think he just did special teams because he had a full-time job, couldn't do it like a full whatever. But he was on the coaching staff. And so he was just as much in the program as my brother was. And then my mom was the team mom. So she was always bringing orange slices and sandwiches at halftime and coordinating all the different banquets and stuff like that. So when you have your mom, dad, brother, all literally ingrained in the program and everything you do, all the gear you wear and all the things that you see as football and all that stuff from a young age, you're like, this is the way of life, right? So for me, I knew nothing else but football is family. Football is once you're on a team and once you're committed to it and you work hard for it, from January 1st to December 31st, regardless if it's off season or in season, you're doing something with football. So it's pretty much where I got it from. My whole family was just evolved around the game of football, and I think that's just kind of stuck with me since I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Okay, so from a very young age, you were just very invested in football, whether it was the competitive aspect of it or whether it was the family aspect of it. Now, obviously, on a personal level, it sounds like your whole family was involved. Your brother was, he was playing. Your dad was the special teams coach. Your mom was the team mom. So you were just surrounded by football. So personally, like biologically, your family was there. But then once you got into the football culture, I'm sure there's a very special bond about your teammates, and it's kind of like sacred, the ritual of playing, and obviously you're like going to battle with each other. It's a very physical, like aggressive sport. So you got to rally around your brothers, and like it just becomes like a very big family dynamic in that aspect as well, right?
Oh yeah, it's those things stick with you for forever too. When you're talking about a team sport like football, right? It's I mean, through the years playing, after when I first got my start playing at a young age, because I went from seeing that at 4 years old, 5 years old, to then obviously getting the itch. I got to start playing football. So we moved out to Troy, Michigan, which is like 20 minutes further north, and we moved out there. So I started playing my little league days right around 5, 6 years old. I think I was 5 going on 6. My first season, it was flag football. And from there, I played with one of the top little league teams in the area, the Troy Cowboys. And from that moment at age 5 going on 6 all the way through, to today, that's when I first got my first taste of what being in a football culture is like firsthand playing. And just like you said, though, being around the team and that brotherhood and that family tie that you have, I can remember back to this day different chants and different breakdowns and different prayers and different huddles that we did as a team from flag football all the way up until the last day I played college. And those things you carry with you and you pass along with you, and some things you just keep sacred because those are like special memories you got. But some of those guys went on to play college level, professional level that were inside the program that we were with. And just been fortunate enough to be exposed to not just the game of football, but the higher level of football, the higher IQ of football, the higher frequencies of football at a young age. Because I realize moving around the country now that a lot of kids and a lot of young adults, they have football in their community, but they don't have it sometimes at the level where it gives them a purpose and a value beyond just playing the game.
Right. I mean, and different people play sports for different reasons. I just did an episode recently with another guy who came on the show, and he played football at a younger age. And for him, football was, in fact, all the sports that he played were a means of like kind of just staying out of trouble. Yeah. He grew up in not the best area. And so his parents just put him in a lot of sports as a means to stay out of,
just to stay on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. Just to like stay out of, being involved with like gangs or drugs or anything. So different people are involved in sports for different reasons. And obviously you kind of build that family as you go, but it's very interesting to hear your story. And I'm sure that plays into who you are now as a man and also as a coach. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because we're going to kind of get into the coaching aspect of football for you as well. But for now, let's move on. I'd like to talk a little bit about the progression of your football career. So you started kind of in that little league like Pee Wee. This next one's kind of like a 3-part question. So hear me out real quick before you answer. First, I want you to kind of walk us through a timeline of your football career and sort of highlight any key moments where you kind of knew that you were going to advance to the next level. Second part of that is, at what point did you feel ready to take that next step? So did those two things like correspond? Like, was it a big game that you had? Was it a specific singular play that you knew in high school that you were like, I'm going to go to college, like that you knew? And then the last part is, when it came time to transition into coaching, sort of what motivated that decision? Were you kind of forced to retire? Did you just kind of naturally come to the end of your playing career? So given that context, kind of walk me through, like, briefly, kind of the entirety of your football career. How did you know it was time to move to the next level? And then how did you know it was time to like retire and move on to coaching?
Gotcha. So, I mean, those are cool questions because I've never really gotten a chance to like go into detail of my thought process behind all that. At least I don't think I have. So, I mean, my football career, like I said, it started at a young age, but I would say just from that little league organization that I was in, the type of talent that I was around. Once I started to realize that, probably about 5th, 6th grade, that type of talent I was around, people were starting to get like offers. Like when I was a JV kid, watching the varsity kids, like, so they're about 3 or 4 years ahead of me usually. When I got to JV, these kids were starting to get into high school. So when I got to varsity, being 6th, 7th grade, those kids that were in varsity when I was there, they were in high school. And I would go to their high school games because I was still young. I wanted to see what they were doing now. So I saw them starting to get offers and start to see them flourish at that level, starting to potentially play college ball and do great things at the high school level. And I was like, I was just playing with these type of kids for the last 5-6 years. and I've been starting and having good stats. And I was like, if I'm able to keep up with this level of competition at such a young age before I even grow, I wasn't thinking this at the time, but before I even really hit the different pinnacles of football, I was like, I can potentially keep doing this at a higher level with I can compete and I can outperform these guys throughout, whatever game it is. And I'm like, this might be like football is where it's at for me. So going through that all the way through Little League, going into middle school, I actually made a crazy transition in middle school. I played for one of the best Little League teams from first grade or second grade all the way through sixth grade. So 7th and 8th grade are usually like the most important years of Little League because it's right before you get to high school, especially when it's a big program like that. I decided to dip out and forego my last 2 years with this Little League program and decided to play for my middle school instead of playing for the Little League team I was on.
Okay.
And the reason why I did is a really funny story is because the Little League travel team, it ended your summer 2 weeks earlier, or 2 or 3 weeks earlier than middle school did, because middle school football couldn't start until classes started.
Right.
But Little League, we started practicing like mid-August, and in Michigan, we don't go to school until after Labor Day. So for us, I remember the 7th and 8th grade summers, I was like, these summers are starting to get fun. We're riding around, hanging out. I can stay out a little bit later than I normally could have. So I remember one summer night, my mom calls me. I got my first cell phone, it was a little flip phone. She calls me. I'm riding bikes with one of my friends, whatever. It's probably about 3 or 4. She says, hey, you need to come home and do your physical because you have practices starting this week for the Troy Cowboys, your Little League team. And I'm like, Mom. And there's still 2 full weeks of summer left. And I'm like, and it's nice out, and it's Michigan. So I'm on my bike and I'm like hanging out, probably doing something I shouldn't do. And I'm like, I think I'm gonna play for Baker this year, my middle school. It's right in our neighborhood, so it's really close. And she said, what? I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do Troy Cowboys. I hope, now that I say this to her, I hope she didn't like pay and register me when I said that. But I never obviously went back and asked her that. But to fast forward, I forego those 2 years of Little League, and I played at my middle school. Sounds like a small transition looking back at it, but it was really big for me because I had already built relationships with the coaches, the players, and I knew it was a good program. But I also realized for myself, too, at the time, I was like, maybe it's not such a bad thing because in middle school, these are the kids I'll be going to high school with. So I should probably get to know them as well. Because in the Little League, we had kids from all over the county. So ended up playing middle school ball for 2 years, won a state city championship, and had an undefeated city season the year after that for our middle school team. And so at that point, I realized, and not to sound cocky or arrogant, but I was like, wherever I go, I can give myself a chance to win. And to me, transition from that Little League program to middle school, it showed me, even with different coaches, different program, different playbook, different kids in different spots, and way less talent, what I bring to the table, because I got a chance to play quarterback, defensive tackle, defensive end, corner, receiver, all in 2 years at this middle school program. I was like, okay, football is a sport where I can compete on any team I go to, and I bring a lot of value to it. So you get to high school, and then obviously everything changes. So in high school, first couple of years, I didn't hit my growth spurt till sophomore year, so I was like 5'6", going into freshman year of high school, just trying to figure out, what it is I'm going to do in high school level. Came in really headstrong because my brother was on varsity. Thought I wanted to play varsity as a freshman. Realized that was probably the dumbest idea I could have had because I just wasn't size, speed, skill, wasn't even close. Long story short, though, with high school, first 2 years were just great learning experiences for me. We went through 2 different head coaches when I got there on the varsity program, so it changed up the whole program quite a bit. We brought in another head coach who ended up being my head coach for junior, senior year, Coach Hefner. And that pretty much transitioned into that growth process. And we got a chance to grow together as a program. And then we ended up making the playoffs for the first time in almost 12 years by the time my senior year was finished. And that just kind of feeds back into that 8th grade story I had where a program, watching my brother at the high school level, they went 0-9, 0-9, 0-9, like 3 years in a row. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, after they've had all these great people come through, my senior class is the first class to get them back to the playoffs. And I'm a huge part of it, right? Starting on defense and all that stuff. So all that goes to show is that from being 4 years old, watching my brother compete at such a high level, winning, playing on a winning team at Little League all the way through, couldn't tell you how many Little League championships, trophies I got at my parents' house. And then going to my middle school, a complete different program, winning a city championship there. And then going to high school, taking our team to the playoffs and being a part of that team. Every level, I got a chance to win. So I knew at this point, only next thing was, how can I get to the college level and win there or be a part of a program there? And to me, when I was leaving high school, it wasn't even, because in Michigan, at that point, it's a smaller market. So, but that winning fed my ego, fed my confidence, and fed my morale and my spirit to where I could have the confidence to go and look for colleges to play at. Because I said I won at every level, and I played a big part into it. So get to the college level, the transition from senior year to senior high school to my freshman year of college. Once I realized that I had the ability to, I started training harder. When I say harder, I mean I used to never be in the weight room freshman through junior year. So my senior year, I finally got my butt in the weight room. Took CrossFit classes outside of that and just those types of things, to the point where after that season, I actually had something to stand on to get recruited. Letters came in from D2 schools like Wayne State, Northwood University. As I think back on those types of things, I potentially had a chance to walk on at a few D1s. But I knew for me, I just wanted to play 4 years of football, because wherever I went, I just wanted to win and be a part of a winning team. So this Adrian College school, they come to the school after a few other schools have, and they have a full program and a great community of school. And the recruiter came and talked to a few of us, and something just kind of clicked and connected. But that's how that process kind of went. And then luckily enough, I don't know if this is part of the question, but got to Adrian College, and I'll talk more about this, probably a few other things we talk about, but from watching my brother win championships, winning myself at Little League, to middle school, to high school, making the playoffs, I knew it was destined, and kind of in the faith that I have, get to Adrian College that same year I get there, that first year, we win a conference championship for the first time in about 8 years. And I'm like, it happened again. And my dad's like, dude, everywhere you go, you win. And I was one of the only freshmen playing at the varsity level at Adrian. I got a great story to tell about that process when we go over a couple of the trials that I went through. But that was the process then. And then I think the last part of your question was how the transition worked to the coaching side of it.
Yeah. How did you basically know that it was time to move on from coaching? But before you talk about that, I just kind of wanted to really reflect on what you just said, kind of summarize what you said. So it sounds like from a young age, no matter where you went, you were part of a winning program. So whether it was at the Little League level, and then I did want to comment earlier on the kind of the Little League versus the middle school team, the summer. I thought that was kind of funny, that story that you had earlier about the summer vacation.
Yeah,
in your mind.
I make crazy ass decisions when I when I get in that zone. Like I'll make some decisions like that.
Yeah.
I knew at a young age, I was like, I kind of control my own destiny on this.
Yeah. It sounded like, what I was hearing was you kind of wanted to extend your summer break by another 2 weeks, which is why you didn't want to play with the travel team anymore.
Yeah.
But it's actually interesting because since you made that decision and you went to basically a new team with new players and new coaches, because you were playing with the middle school team, I think you said it was Baker.
Yeah, Baker Middle School.
At the time, shout out to the who? Bobcats. Baker Bobcats. At the time, you and this kind of fed into your ability to transition into a new program. And it sounds like no matter where you went, you've been part of winning programs. And I have no doubt that you played a massive part of that with your leadership and your multi-dimensional ability to play football. It sounds like you mostly played defense as you progressed, but when you were younger, you played quarterback, you played wide receiver, you kind of played a lot of different positions. So just like you're a very dynamic football player overall. But it sounds like as you progressed through all the programs that you went through, you just impacted winning. So Little League, middle school, high school, and then it sounds like when it was time to transition to college, you could have walked on to a D1, maybe you could have gone to a D2. You might not have played as much, or maybe you could have gone to a D2 school that wasn't as good, and you knew that you wanted to be part of a winning program. So you ultimately went to a D3 school. You said Adrian College, I believe.
Yeah.
And your freshman year, you were already impacting winning, and that program won. You said a state championship? Conference championship that year.
Yeah.
So everywhere that you've been, and I have no doubt that this is true about your life right now as well, you impact winning.
Yeah.
The kind of last question that I had from earlier was, you played 4 years of college ball, and then at some point it was time to retire. You probably got a bachelor's degree, I'm imagining, and your football career as a player came to an end. So it sounds like that wasn't really forced. It just kind of happened naturally.
Right.
Was that difficult for you? Was that a graceful transition? Did you know that you wanted to coach immediately? Like, walk me through that transition a little bit.
So I think it was a well-needed transition to happen. Just because when you get to that level, for me, just my eyes start to become more open as I got older, right? But when you start to realize, especially in the sport of football, that one, there's so many players, so many schools, but that transition from college, I always look back and I always told my parents especially was, I never had any serious injuries. I never had any major issues on or off the field that caused me to have any adversity that I couldn't get through. And I won and did so many things that probably only maybe 5% of people ever do in football. And I got to do it at different levels and meet so many people and play with so many people that have played pros, and I've had people I played against that have played pro ball. So I've done all those things. So when I got to that senior year in college, for me, I knew the only way to keep going with football was to either pay my way through by paying to go to showcases, or trying to pay an agent to get my exposure out there, or go travel overseas to go play with semi-pro teams and stuff like that. But for me, at that point, it didn't seem like the love of football would be what I'm chasing anymore. At that point, it seems like I'm starting to chase money from it, or chase a living from it. And I was like, if I'm going to chase a living from something, it's not going to be a sport where 100,000 people are playing per year and my chances of getting paid off of it are 1%. I was like, because those odds aren't in my favor at that point. Not to mention, I hung out with a lot of cats that went to U of M and Michigan State that played the same position or played the same sport that I'm playing, and I saw the difference. And I was like, oh, you guys are freaks. Like, you guys got fed something different for 4 years than what we did at a D3 level, and I'm cool with that. I was like, but at the same time, your guys' chance of getting paid from playing are just as slim as mine. And you guys have the natural, or the whatever they fed you guys up here, you guys have that ability at a D1 level. So anyway, get to my senior year, and I said, what's going to be good for me is finding the passion I have for winning and competitive driven sports at a team level. How can I find that in my career? So the transition out of football, I think it would have been tough if I didn't find my career field right as I graduated. So my senior year, spring break, I remember everyone went to like, where was like the spring break back in the day? Everyone went to like Pensacola or like
Daytona Beach,
South Padre, all that, like Padre Island, like all that stuff down in Florida.
Yeah.
Right. So everyone went down there, and it was last year's spring break. Everyone wanted to like go let loose, whatever. I stayed back at school because I was actually playing lacrosse. So my last year of school, I always forget that I played a year of college lacrosse too.
Okay, so you must have been playing lacrosse in high school as well then.
I did play 2 years. It's weird that I always forget to talk about that because I get so driven on football, but I did play 2 years of high school lacrosse, junior and senior year. Went all county and all region both years, and we had a really good team. Like, we were actually like, our lacrosse team was actually like, we were studs. Like, we made the Final Four. We lost like 2 private schools back-to-back years. We were like nationally ranked for like a week for a second as a public school. But I played 2 years lacrosse, and then got a chance to play 1 year in college when they knew my football career. Like, I was done with football. Lacrosse coach comes up and says, "Yo, you want to pick up the sticks again and play some lacrosse?" I ended up quitting like with like 5 games left in the season for college lacrosse, because I was like, I'm not doing anything with this. And I was like, I got like 4 weeks left to being like a normal student. So I just wanted to do that instead. But anyway, what I was saying is during spring break, since I was there, I actually used that time to figure out what I want to do next after college. And that's how I got invited or kind of exposed to the career that I'm in now in the insurance industry. And that transitioned me perfectly from football to what I'm doing now. Never actually had any intentional coaching. In 2016 when I graduated, coaching was not in the forefront of my mind. It wasn't even like, I think I thought about trying to be a grad assistant at one point, potentially, but I was like, I'm definitely not trying to go back to school to do that. So I like eliminated coaching because I found a career opportunity. But yeah, it didn't come back around coaching until 2021. So almost 6 years after I was done playing football. The thought of coaching or getting back into the coaching world, it came back to me for obviously some various reasons. But yeah, it wasn't until about 6 years after I stopped playing football that coaching came back around.
Okay, so when you finished your college football career, you had no inclination on coaching at the time. It wasn't like a natural transition.
No, it wasn't. For me, it was the separation. It was the separation I needed from football, because I always look back. I played football from 5 years old till 21, 22. That's 17, 16 years of every year. It's football.
Every day, every week, every month.
Every Saturday.
Even if you weren't actively playing, it was nutrition or it was playbooks. It was you're always thinking about it. You're always talking about it with your friends, because all your friends were probably on the football team too.
It was the anxiety every August 1st. Are you in shape? Are you ready? Like,
yeah.
August 1st, I still get the same itch.
Yeah.
Like, am I in shape? Because by August 1st, you needed to be like in prime shape, because once 2-a-days start, like the first week of August, you're going to know who's been working and who's been slacking in the off season. So every time August 1st rolls around, even till this day, I always get like this weird anxiousness where it's like, shit, have I been working or not?
Am I in shape?
Am I in shape?
Am I ready?
Why do I want to go like run through a wall right now? But my transition went straight from being a college athlete. Literally the day after I graduated, I went and took my insurance exam to get certified in the state of Michigan to sell life insurance, life and health insurance. So I didn't even have a gap or a break or any like dead period. Literally the day after I graduated, that Monday after, I was sitting in a corporate classroom studying for my insurance license. A week after that, I got certified. And then 6 months after that, I was already in a leadership position with that job at that time. I'm selling insurance and running a sales team. So literally 6 months after I graduated, I was already like, knee deep in the insurance world. But yeah, that was my transition from being a college athlete to the next step. And then, like I said, coaching didn't even come until years down the road after that.
All right, so let's pivot to talking about mental performance techniques a little bit more now. So with respect to your football career and maybe your lacrosse playing days as well, but mostly football, since that's what we're here to talk about, what mental skills or techniques do you wish that you had learned earlier in your playing career, and how do you believe that they would have helped you in your performance?
So at that time, especially when I was in college and high school going to college, I don't feel as if, and this is just kind of looking at wide spectrum, that the mental health, mental advantages, and like the mental performance was as greatly focused on during those times as it might be now at certain parts of like the world. And for that, I feel like there's a lot of missing elements mentally that I didn't get a chance to focus on as heavily as I feel like some athletes get a chance to now, because it's just more regulated, more natural. I think at that time it had to be more sought after, but now programs have brought it in to be part of their regimen, which I think is a complete 180 from how it used to be, but in a very good way. So things that I wish that I would have done or would have been introduced to at that age of 18, 19, 20 playing college ball was probably just a little bit more like meditation focus, or ways to slow down my thinking and kind of get a chance to focus on inner self, kind of just mental growth. So one thing that I wish I could have done more so were beginner or introductory yoga type of classes, even if it was more so just like a stretching class, because those types of classes allow for you not to just, obviously it's good for your muscles and strength and flexibility and mobility on the field, but having an hour to 30 minutes or 2 hours a day of stretching or deep release tissue, stretching, it actually kind of connects you mentally when you take a moment to kind of find where your body is, kind of fine tune what parts of your body ache or are not strong. Because a lot of times when you stretch and you're lunging or bending your body certain ways, you can realize, oh, I need to strengthen that part, or I need to really loosen up that part. And you know, that connection with your body, what you need to do differently in the gym or at home, or what you need to eat differently. But we never really had moments where we got a chance to connect internally with our body. It was always just push your body to the max. How much can you bench? How much can you squat? How much can you run? How much can you take? How much, how hard can you hit? It was never Sunday, we're going to have an hour of a stretch or a yoga session to reset our body. So I would just say more connection with how my body felt, with what I was putting in my body. So that was like on the mental side. And the other thing would be probably just being connected with diet better, because I feel like mentally you're affected by what you put in your body as well. And we didn't really have at that level a dietitian or nutrition team to really like hold us accountable to what we ate, because it just wasn't something that D3 schools usually did, or smaller schools usually did. So we didn't really have that. And I think that plays a big part in your mental, what you consume and what you're eating, what you're drinking and stuff like that. And then lastly, for me, being a little bit more connected in my faith. There's a program called Fellowship of Christian Athletes that we had in college that I didn't find till later in life. But I know if I was a little bit more connected to my faith throughout all of college, I think that would have been a little bit more help to find purpose, and to be able to kind of give me those things mentally that I needed to kind of feed my faith, as well as keep pulling me in the right direction through a lot of different adversity that would happen. But yeah, those are probably three things I wish you could have. Just more ways to connect physically with your body, a little more accountability, a little bit more guidance in what we put into our body. And then for me, spiritually, a stronger influence spiritually that I could have gotten if I would have had a little bit more instruction or push in those directions at a younger age. But those are probably three things that I think I wish I would have either had or taken more advantage over when I was at those ages.
So those are three things that sort of, after some reflection in your further, stage, adult life, you're thinking like meditation, or I might actually classify that somewhat as mindfulness.
Yeah.
So sort of being aware of your body and like what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what feels tight, what do I need to stretch a little bit more. Meditation and mindfulness typically, or oftentimes, go hand in hand. That sort of being aware on purpose in the present moment, sort of non-judgmentally of my thoughts, of my body, these sorts of things. So meditation being a big one. Diet obviously is big in terms of sort of the whole idea of garbage in, garbage out. Now, you may not have been eating necessarily garbage, but that whole saying basically goes to say that you are what you eat, right? If you eat a poor diet, you're going to have poor outcomes.
Yeah.
If you fuel your body with good, healthy, like lean proteins, and you're hydrating and you're getting, the micronutrients, you're eating your vegetables, like you're going to be thinking more clearly. You're not going to have as much brain fog. Your energy is going to be better. So mentally that plays into enhancing your performance. And then for you specifically, your faith, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, could have helped you to find more of a purpose, sort of mentally or spiritually when you were younger. So those are kind of the three big things that you would say that you wish you knew more, or spent more time
just
with.
Like a better understanding.
Yeah.
Had a better understanding, or realistically just had more of an influence on my life at that time. Because I think it could have done even more wonders. I always will say I'm always grateful for what they didn't win through. But I just always wonder if I had a little bit more of those fundamentals, like already impacted at such a young age, like what the difference could have been. Maybe not a huge difference, but those are 3 things I wish there could have been more of.
Okay. Can you share a specific example of whether you were aware of it at the time or not? Looking back, can you share a specific example of when a mental performance skill or technique sort of helped you overcome a specific situation, whether it was handling like a high pressure moment in a big game or overcoming a tough loss or dealing with injuries? Thinking back, did you have any mental performance techniques that you used that helped you to overcome any of those things?
So, getting a chance to, I guess, be at the college level, I feel like every situation was really crucial because you're always fighting for a spot or fighting to win. And it's more meaningful every practice, every rep and stuff like that. But athletically, the mental skill that I would say I use most of is relying on my faith to get me through any tough situation. What I mean by that is I always knew skill-wise, physically, I could get things done at my speed, at my strength, just the football aspects of being an athlete. But what I always knew, though, that a lot of people didn't have was a strong mind with their faith. So I would always pray and talk to God about any situation I was going through, usually in private. That's just kind of how I like to keep my faith at most parts of my life. But anything that I was dealing with, so like for instance, I always take it back to potentially not knowing if I was ever going to play in college to having a starting spot on our nickel package by the time I graduated throughout those next 3 years. But my faith and kind of being able to have that connection relationship with God, I think got me through a lot of things that I don't think I would have. Lucky enough, I said earlier, I didn't really have any injuries that ever caused me to have turmoil in my football career, which I'm forever thankful for. That's a blessing. I never really had any major academic issues that caused turmoil that I had to couple back grades with study hall, but never had any issues that caused turmoil. Never really had any major fallouts internally with players or coaches too much that caused turmoil that I had to get through. So a lot of that stuff, I would say my faith and being blessed and having the clear opportunity helped out in that situation. But whenever I did face any challenges, hiccups, learning how to prioritize, learning how to be a man, learning how to mature myself while playing the game of football as an athlete, I always say my best mental skill was using my faith as a shield and using the word of God as a shield to shield my mental. Because I don't think I could take a full load of classes, work a full-time job, be a full-time college athlete. Also, I mentioned lacrosse earlier, but I was also full-time involved in theater. I did a total of 3 shows and directed 1 in college. Ran our radio department. So I was the general manager of our radio station. Had a major and a minor. So it was like those things to me, without the faith and just without my communication or relationship and just having that faith to be able to shield how much and how intense I was going with everything, that to me is what helped out the most. Because I learned no matter what you're going to go through in life, there's going to be tough times, right? But the thing is, tough times don't last. Tough people do. And if I can have the faith and have that relationship, know that God's going to watch over that and protect my mental, why not go through it all? Why not do 8 different things? Why not be in a musical during football season while working a full-time job, while still trying to study, while in a relationship with my girlfriend now, wife at the time? Why not go through all of that and see how it works out? Because if you got God on your side, if my faith is that strong and my mental is that protected and guarded by that, I can go through anything that I want to put myself through. So a lot of people are like, why are you loading your plate so much? Or how are you going to balance it? I was like, what do you mean, how am I going to balance? Everyone always says they want to eat, but when their plate gets full, they always want to back off. Your goal was to eat. You came to college to do whatever. You came to college to have an athletic career. You came to college to get a degree, to make network, to make connections. And all of a sudden, the stuff that you wish for, it fills your plate with surplus amount. You can't be afraid to eat because you got a full plate. That's what you wish for. But the thing is, people don't strengthen their mindset because maybe it's the cracks in their faith. Maybe it's the cracks in what they ingest, or maybe it's other things that traumatize at a younger age. But for me, like I mentioned, from age 4, when I first started realizing how strong football was and how the winning mindset can take you really far. I grew up in a Christian household. I grew up where faith and that practice gave you strength, right? But faith without work is dead. So I always knew that for me, any tough times or any adverse situations, I had the strong mindset to be able to take on literally anything that stood in my way. Was I always successful with everything? No, that's not human nature. But I do know for a fact that was probably my strongest mental skill, was to be able to have a strong mindset going into anything that I wanted to accomplish.
So basically just leaning on your faith. Because you had your faith, you knew that no matter what you were going through, whether you were successful at it or not, which, I mean, it does sound like you were successful at just about everything that you did. Although, as you mentioned, it's unrealistic and not really human nature to be successful at everything that we do. But ultimately, you would say your greatest mental attribute is your faith. You knew that you had your faith, and that would give you the strength to get through whatever it was that you needed to get through.
Exactly. And then finding separation from your stressors. I can't stress it. I know we'll get into it in a second, but if I can tell you, finding your separation from your stressors without eliminating your stress. Everyone wants to be like, how can I eliminate stress from my life? You can't eliminate stress. If you want to be a high-performing athlete, if you want to be a high-performing businessman or businesswoman, if you want to be a high-performing dad or mom or parent, if you want to be a high-performing friend, it comes with stress. It comes with adversity, right? So what I always told myself was, you can't avoid stress. You're going to have to get through it. But how can you create separation from your stress to keep your mind at ease? That's why I said earlier, finish line, the shoe store. That was one of my separations from football stress. It wasn't my solution. It was like, okay, I know I can be good at a lot of stuff. I know I can win, but I, fortunately enough, in my head, I say, hey, you're not getting paid to be at the school, essentially. You get paid $3,000 a month, while most college kids are going broke. You're getting paid $30,000 a year, and you have a full-time job selling shoes at a shoe store, the only shoe store in a 20-mile radius of this country city that everyone loves and goes to. So you have something going for you here too. So when times are a little tough at football, 8 hours you're working from, in between class, or 4 hours here, 4 hours there, that's your separation from your stressor to rejuvenate what your purpose is. And that's why I always took work so seriously, because I'm like, I get a chance to still thrive in the midst of adversity in football. Everyone else has to be stuck in that situation because they have nothing else to do. So finish line, that was one of my separations from stress. Work in the radio station, that was one of my separations from academic stress, because it allowed me to still be heavily involved in my major, but allowed for me to do it and separate myself from the academic stress. Theater was a separation of stress. Some people call it therapy, some people call it therapeutic things, but those were just my separations from stress that allowed for me to maintain my connection with what my purpose was, outside of just being so sunken into adversity, maybe from football or personal life, whatever it was. I always find ways to pretty much self-therapy or separate myself from these types of stressors. But yeah, I think that leaning on my faith and finding those things at that age, it was a learning experience. And I never knew what I was teaching myself then, but I knew it was positive because it wasn't leaning towards drugs. It wasn't leaning towards alcohol. It wasn't leaning on individuals. It wasn't leaning on vulnerable people to pick you up. It was, what can you do to keep your mind sharp? What can you do to keep your mind intact in a positive manner? And I think I did a decent job at a young age to find those things.
Yeah, sounds like it. So it sounds like kind of the two main things as far as like your mental performance techniques that you used were to find your strength through your faith, because it was always there. And then also to compartmentalize. Basically, you had these stressors in your life, football and school, and the stressors of being a young man, and distractions of women and partying and drugs and all these things that are real things that pretty much everybody goes through when they go to college. But you were able to understand that those stressors existed and compartmentalize. So you would be able to go to your job and kind of take away from the stress of dealing with football or academics at your job. And then you were able to compartmentalize because you were doing the radio station thing. That was a separate thing. Yep. So you were able to kind of clear your mind, and it allowed you to think a little bit more kind of level-headed. And I'm sure that played into kind of what you talked about earlier with figuring out the depth chart with the football team and realizing that these guys aren't going to make it. And even though there's 12 guys on the depth chart, I know I'm better than these guys and I'm going to put in the hard work. So it sounds like you had some good tools as part of your kind of tool belt that helped you perform. Now let's talk about coaching now, because you had a successful football playing career. And coaching isn't your full-time thing right now. You're still doing the insurance and the health insurance and the life insurance, but you're also a high school football coach. So this is a big part of what I want to talk about with this podcast at large, and specifically with our episode, because here we are together today, is paying it forward to the next generation. Because there's a lot of athletes who are either current or retired. Maybe they used mental performance techniques. Maybe they didn't. Sounds like you had a couple of good ones that you went with that, worked for you when you were playing. Let's talk about, so how did your experiences as a player sort of shape your approach to coaching, if they did? And if they didn't, how are you coaching now with respect to some of these mental performance techniques that you're able to teach this next generation of athletes, what mental performance is and how it can help them perform better? So how do you approach that?
So as a player and someone that's been around the game of football, and as an athlete, been around many athletes in different shapes, sizes, and skill sets, one thing I would like to just express is, I think I mentioned this a second ago, when you're at the level where you think you can withstand it, I don't want to say at a young age, because I feel like everyone grows differently. But when you're at a level when you think you can withstand it, put as much on your plate as possible. Bury yourself in all positive, hopefully, obviously there's going to be some negatives that come with everything, but bury yourself in as much work or as much physical or mentally grueling things that most people don't want to go through. Because the more you attack the hard things up front, the more you have to deal with up front, the more battle tested your mental will be. It'll make all the easy things later in life, right? It'll make almost everything easier later in life. So the thing that I always would like to say is that what kind of shaped me, if I could tell like a younger athlete or athlete up and coming, is what shaped my mind was, one, I was fortunate enough to have an influence at home and growing up that I always saw as hardworking, winning, competitive, but spiritually connected and always focusing on positives. That always led with love and always led with the right mindset, right? So I was fortunate enough to have that from the moment I was brought into this world all the way through. I know not everyone has that in-depth experience growing up, but find something that shows you how to win. Find something that shows you how to get through adverse situations. Find someone that will pour into you to teach you those things. Because for me, as great as it sounds that I won at a lot of stuff, I also took a lot of losses growing up, but knowing how to win is one of the best tools that I think I have. Because if you look at like the Lakers, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Patriots, all these winning organizations, the reason why they kept winning wasn't always about the players that they had or the coaches or the plays. But once you win once and you know the recipe to win, it's a lot easier for you to do it again, regardless of who's next to you. The reason why a lot of losing programs or losing people don't continue to win is because if you don't know how to win, you'll never be able to. Fortunately for me, I was around people that taught me how to win. So the thing I'll tell people is to shape them growing up, or the mental skills to take is find where your faith is. Find people that will give you the influence to have a strong mental capacity. Then once you feel like you can withstand a lot of mental pressure and a lot of imbalance in life or adversity, put as much on your plate as possible. Not everything will pan out good, but figure out how to sharpen your mind to be able to conquer as much as you can. Because once you start facing other challenges, it'll make those challenges a lot easier, whether it's buying a house, getting married, having kids, doing like the real adult stuff outside of being an athlete. Your mind will already been tested and knows how to win. So that's what my biggest thing would be. And then the last thing would be have a level of patience with yourself. Know how to find inner peace in everything that you do during the stressful situations. As much as football stresses me out, to me, playing football, being on the field, became like a sanctuary of peace. As much as work stresses people out, even in the high intensity sales that I do, when I sell life insurance, it's a peaceful, like it's my inner peace. I started playing golf. As grueling and frustrating and annoying as golf is, I find an inner peace with it because everything that I've gone through in life has showed me that through the challenges, there's peace on the other side. Through adversity, there's solutions. And if you have that nature to know how to win at everything, not just like winning on paper, just finding solutions for everything, it helps you know, okay, this frustrating process, it's actually it's good for me. Because this process, this adversity, this challenge, this is shaping me to know how to win if I can get through this. Because on the other side of this challenge, it's a win. On the other side of this adversity, it's a win. On the other side of this negative moment, it's a win. And if you get that mindset ingrained at a young age, no college coach, no recruiter, no adversity at school, none of those things can affect you because you know how to get through it all. Maybe not the solution, but you know that you can get through it. So those little things I'll give back to people that kind of shaped me going through everything I went through.
So you learned those lessons basically as a player. And now it sounds like I kind of felt like I was a player on your football team for a second there. Like, is this how you talk to your players?
100%.
So this is you teach them like everything that you just told me.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that's obviously talking to kids or at that level, obviously I might use more of their TikTok jargon or whatever. I don't know if I know any off the top of my head, but yeah, those are the same messages I pass to everyone. So what shaped me into that, where I got most of that from, it's funny because I put myself through a lot of it when I was a player, when I was an athlete, but I would say about 70% of those skills came from what I transitioned to as an athlete, and that's in the business world. So for me, I always like to say, and we haven't talked a lot about it on this one, maybe in the future, but as much of a student athlete shaped these things, what I called myself after I was done playing football and lacrosse and moved into the business world, I was a business athlete. That's why I was able to transition so smoothly, like we talked about earlier, into the business world, because I never stopped being an athlete. I just stopped putting on a uniform. So from 2016, when I started in the insurance world, to present, I always consider myself still a business athlete. I compete at the highest level. I build teams and coach people. I've been coaching people since 2016. You asked me if I coach football or if I got back into football coaching. I didn't do that till 2021. But I've been coaching people through sales and insurance and through business since I was 21 years old. So that coaching and that mindset I built up from playing, my transition out, but I never lost the competitive and the athlete side of it. I just put on a different uniform each day.
Fascinating. I've never heard that term business athlete before, but I think that's very insightful and a really good piece of advice. Not that you necessarily meant it as such, but for a lot of people that identify as athletes, which there are, most of us at some point in our lives participate in sports. Yeah. Obviously, as children, we play kind of like peewee, elementary, magnet ball, whatever you want to call it, right. Youth sports. And then as we get older as humans, we kind of age out of it a little bit, and fewer people participate in sports as they get older. But for the sake of this podcast, one of the things that athletes specifically struggle with is the loss of identity when it's time to retire from playing their sport. Because whether you retire after high school, whether you retire, maybe you play a couple of years of college, maybe you're forced to retire because of injury, maybe you're cut from the team, athletes that get drafted and go pro, maybe they just aren't good enough. They are, again, forced to retire because of injury, or maybe they have an illustrious Hall of Fame career and they retire after playing for 20 years at the highest level. Every athlete has to suffer from identity loss when they are no longer an athlete anymore. And I really like what you said about that you're a business athlete, because you were a business athlete when you were playing, because you were working at the shoe store, you were working at the radio station, and you graciously finished your playing career after playing 4 years of college football and transitioned into sales and insurance, health and life insurance. And you still classify yourself as an athlete, a business athlete. You're still competing at the highest level. You still have that competitor mentality. Sales, for anybody that's never worked in it, is a very competitive, like cutthroat industry where the top few percent, generally speaking, make the lion's share of the money. So you have to be really good at what you do, and you have to be competitive, and you have to want to learn, and you have to want to show up to work and be dedicated and passionate. So I think it's really cool that you still take that mentality of an athlete and apply it to your life right now. And I think it's great that you're probably teaching that same lesson to your athletes right now that you're coaching. I heard you also say that you coach on the business side. So are you like a manager? So are you coaching?
Yeah, so I've led teams of 5 to 50 to 150 people since I've been in the insurance industry, all over the country, virtually and in person. That's when I started coaching in 2016. After 6 months in, I started building my own team. And I was fortunate enough to have started an agency in St. Louis, been a part of agencies, obviously in Detroit, here out in Southern California, to the point where I've gotten a chance to really elevate myself in that industry as well. Been a part of two SG of the Year, State Agency of the Year teams, which is like the highest honor you can get in the company that I'm with. So it's like winning a national championship, basically. I've done that twice with 2 different teams. And a lot of different accolades with that. So that's why when I talk about a lot of stuff when it comes to leadership and coaching and having a strong mind and finding those things, do I wish there's a lot more that I could have done in the past as an athlete with mental skills? Oh, 1,000,000%. However, the stuff that I learned along the way after being a student athlete actually lets me pass down more to my athletes from what I learned as being a business athlete. Because being a business athlete is really cool, because I took the locker room from my college, the environment in the locker room, the energy, the passion, not all the antics, but I took the energy from the locker room and the football field, and I literally brought that same energy from the moment I finished to the business world. Any person that I coach in the business world, I coach them almost like I coach a football player in the field. So that's where my kids and the team that I coach over at Hoover, I always tell them, and I've only been there now for a little bit, so I'm still growing the relationship with a lot of the kids, but I tell them the same way. End of the day, your job here is you want to eat. But if you want to eat, right, your plate's got to be full. So when you get a full plate, when that's grades, that's doing your chores at home, that's being a good kid, that's being a good sibling to your brother or sister, being a good boyfriend or girlfriend, all that stuff, and then being a good athlete, you have a lot on your plate. You have a lot on your plate, especially if you want to make it to the college level, because you have to work out, train, still get good grades, still be a good student, still be a good son, still be a good brother. You have a lot on your plate.
Probably working a job on the side as well.
Yeah, and this community in Southern California, you're dang sure
definitely working a job.
At 16 years old.
Yeah.
And then you're catching a bus to get to school. Like, you got a lot on your plate. What are you doing to strengthen your mindset? Yes, you're coming to practice every day. That's great. But are you going home and taking care of your body? Are you going home and desensitizing your mind to everything that you like? What are you doing to keep yourself level-headed so everything that we teach you on the field can actually be absorbed? So I tell all those things to my players, just like how I coach my team on the sales side. Because I tell them, I was like, end of the day, this is all performance-based. Nobody cares what you did last game. It's all about what you do for me lately. So next game, if you got an interception last game, that means nothing if you miss 5 tackles next game. So how can you continue to develop yourself to stay sharp? Do you go home and eat a bag of Takis, or do you go home and recover and stretch, take a warm bath, make sure that you're loose, make sure that any aches and pains you're getting fixed, making sure that you're still in the weight room 3 times a week during the season? Are you reading and ingesting football? I'll tell you right now, these kids, they don't watch NFL. They don't watch college sports, college football on the weekend because they're so busy during the week that the weekend they want to just decompress and be on TikTok. But I tell my kids, I'm like, watch at least 2 games, 1 college, 1 NFL game. Because what it teaches you is how football is played. I don't care if you can't see yourself being an NFL or college player, but it just teaches you the mechanics of what to do on 4th down. Like, so just keep your mind sharp. Ingest the right stuff. You said earlier, if you keep inputting garbage, you're going to output garbage. So that's the kind of stuff I've always trying to teach my kids. And then the biggest thing I always took is no matter where you are in life, like my dad always said, don't let anyone outwork you. Whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, if you just put in the work on all 3 of those phases, have a mind, body, and spirit, you're going to win everything that you do.
So it sounds like you're already preaching and paying forward a lot of lessons to the next generation, whether it's people that you're coaching in the sales and insurance world or your high school football athletes, which it sounds like you're still developing relationships with. But what is one thing that you know now, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice from something that you've learned now, what is one piece of advice, one mental performance advice that you could go back and give young Brandon to perform better?
That's a good question.
Because you were already doing a lot of things. It sounds like you were pretty aware when you were younger, but like, what's one thing now, if you could go back, that you know?
Stretch.
Okay. No, that's certainly a piece of advice.
No, I would say development. If I could have developed myself
more specifically, like mentally.
Obviously, well, mentally it's like unfair because I just wasn't mature. Yeah. I think mentally is like by default, like, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to have been this developed at that young age because it takes some of the like learning and naiveness that I think we need in our youth. But I do wish I could have matured a little earlier, but that's always hindsight 2020. But by develop, I mean more so develop habits and discipline of training, because that's not the only thing, but that's one of the major things that I think that diverted me to the D3 level and more comfortably, because I didn't take the training and self-development outside of what our normal regimen was as seriously as I could have, ever. And that's every year that I had a training regimen. I never went as hard in the summer or in the off season that I ever think now, knowing my capacity, that I could. I always obviously got in shape, and I always could run decently fast, and I always, by the time in the summer, I could bench press, 225, a couple, whatever. I always did enough to be where I wanted to be, but never to the point where I think I maxed out my capacity. But you don't know that always until you look back and be like, wow, I had a lot more in the tank I probably could have used. But at the same time, was it possible with working full time and doing all that other stuff? Was it possible? Now at this age, I know it was, because those problems compared to adult problems were so much less. But that's the only thing I would say to anyone, especially my younger self, is that hour that you're BSing in the dorm, or that 2 hours that you spent in the student lounge just talking shit, or chasing whatever, or being out partying, dude, just go spend that 1 hour in the gym extra than what the football workout was in the morning. It wouldn't have hurt you. You're already there at 5 a.m. Your classes are done with. It's 7 p.m. You got nothing to do between now and going to sleep and waking up until 5 a.m. tomorrow. Go into the gym and just go into the gym. You might not lift the weight, but maybe you'll stretch and move your body and play basketball, or you'll get you'll burn those calories, or you'll get that extra movement and mobility in that you need. But I never did that.
So you would say, if you sort of, to pay it forward to the next generation, or if you were to give, as the question I asked you, a piece of advice to your younger self, if you want to maximize your potential as an athlete, develop better habits and discipline of training at a younger age.
Yes.
Which means be a little bit more regimented in following your workout structure, a little bit more regimented in eating a healthier diet, a little bit more regimented in going to bed at a specific time, getting your 8 hours.
Prioritizing your day.
8 hours of sleep, prioritizing your day. So setting up a routine, for example, is a big one. Having a game day routine, or whether it's an everyday routine. So habits and discipline of training is going to, even if it makes you 1% better than what you were before, I think a lot of athletes maybe don't understand, maybe they do, but I'm here to offer some clarity. As you progress to the next level, it's the 1% differences that kind of make or break whether you make the team, whether you get the call from the D1 or the D2 school, whether you get drafted. Like, that matters. We're talking about small details.
Super small.
So the younger that athletes can get started on these things, whether they're mental or physical, it's going to compound over the years and make you optimize your performance.
Exactly. 1,000,000%. And you don't want to leave it on the table. And I always say to myself, maybe it was just that 1%, but I left that 1% on the table. I know every day I did. And in my opinion, like I said before, could I have reached that 1% with how much I was loading myself with? I still don't always know the answer to that. But at this age, when I look back at it, if I could have obtained that 1% development each day, I personally think I was better than being at a D3. But I mean, not that it was bad, but I personally think there could have been more to come from it. I might not have put myself in a position of even having to compete with 12 people, but I say all that stuff to say I'm super glad I went through it, because now when I teach the kids that I'm with, and when I teach people in any of my training, and it's the same thing in the business side, if you're not developing yourself or creating those habits of discipline, or at least putting yourself to be able to lean on your faith as strong as I did, and that's the reason why I think I'm so connected now with FCA, and shout out to Devin and our ministry there. It helps me see clearly what's important and how to prioritize and how to have that strong those mental skills. And I think I do everything I can now, every time I get a chance to, even platforms like this, to share that with people that might scroll past this. If you get a chance, or if you have the ability to, right, take on those hard challenges up front. Rely on your faith, but create habits of discipline and create a structure and a set priority to develop and keep training yourself every day, no matter what industry, no matter what field you're in, whether you're an athlete or a business athlete. Every single day you got to do something to get yourself better. And I think I've taken that with me, and I think if I would have had that when I was younger, I would have loved it. I did some of it, but not to this extent. But now every day I teach, the kids that I have, or like the athletes that I get a chance to train with. You got to be developing yourself at least 1%. Maybe not on the field, but in football. Like for me, even if I wasn't going to the weight room, how much film did I study? Not as much as I should have. How much football did I watch? Not as much as I should have. How much workshops and clinics did I go to learn about defense? Not nearly as much as I wish I would have up front. But now that I know those things, I can pass those on to the next generation of athletes.
And as we wrap up here, thank you for sharing those thoughts. It's very insightful to hear, particularly the part that you mentioned earlier about business athlete. But kind of high level, what we talked about is, developing habits and discipline of training, compartmentalizing so that you don't get overwhelmed with the stressors of life. And particularly for your journey, having a strong mind through your faith. Where can people find more about your journey or connect with you if they have any questions about either your high school coaching, is it Fellowship of Christian Athletics?
Yeah, Fellowship of Christian Athletics.
Do you have social media, or where can people connect with you and find more about your journey?
Yeah, so my journey, I try to, prioritize how much I share with it. Obviously, publicly, I'll keep everything on Instagram and Twitter, or X, as they call it. But it's Brandon.m.neal on Instagram, Brandon M. Neal on Twitter, X. And you can always keep up with me on those things. I basically try to keep everything in the forefront that we're doing with athletics at Hoover High School. Shout out to Coach Gray and staff over there. We've had great success over there, and I hope this next class that comes in, we get a chance to mold the same way we made the second round of the playoffs this year. Like I said, every aspect that I get involved with, we get a chance to win and compete. That's why no matter where I'm at, I always make sure one, I'm able to give as much as I can into whatever I do, because I know we'll have a chance to compete if I'm in it. And that's not a cocky statement. That's not a overconfident statement. It's just one of those things where I want to make sure that if I give everything I got, we're going to do everything we need to do to try to win. Like I said, it doesn't always work. We only made it to the second round this year when we had a team to go easily win a state championship. We fell short, but those are things I want to give to people. So if you want to follow along for the journey on that, always social media is really good. But being located at Hoover High School up in City Heights, come check us out. Obviously, we hope to grow, not just from that. I hope to grow my own defensive back training academy in the future. That's kind of what's on the forefront. I would love to have a sales training consulting group and a football training group that I do like hand in hand. Like obviously, I like sales coaching and I love coaching football players just as much. So coaching is just something that fuels me and keeps me going, because it's always great to see people winning because they're getting a winning recipe. If you have that recipe, you can't lose. You might take losses, but you'll never lose the major battles. And when you lose, you learn from it, right? And the best part about learning is when you drop the L, you start earning, whether it's money, whether it's wins, whatever it may be. But teaching people how to win, so when they lose, it becomes a learning experience instead of a loss, so they can keep continually trying to find ways to win again. That's what it's all about. So yeah, if you want to come find the journey and take that journey with me, it's always social media. I don't post a whole heck of a lot, but as much as the kids do, but definitely like to keep people motivated, inspired, uplifted, just because that's the opportunity that we all have. I think the best mental ability is availability. And if you're available for someone, no matter what you think you can or can't give back, you might be doing more than you ever think you could. So to me, the meditation, the grounding, the habits, the discipline, the culture, the leadership, that stuff is amazing when it comes to mental and mindset. But to me, the best ability that you can have for your mental is availability. Be available for somebody. For me, it's the kids. It's the people that come into my organization that I train in business. I'm available to coach you, and I come from a place where I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you have the tools you need, just like I was blessed with growing up at a young age. So, yeah, man, like I said, I hope everyone gets a chance to kind of follow through that journey or have their own journey and kind of have their chance to win as much as me and other people along the way. But yeah, that's about it.
Well, Brandon, I really want to thank you for taking the time to be here today. It sounds like you've impacted winning for yourself and for a number of different people throughout the course of your life, and I think that you will continue to do so. I'm definitely going to put the social media information in the show notes so that people can find out more about your journey, connect with you, and any of the organizations that you're involved with if they would like. But once again, thank you for taking the time to share your story and your journey. And, let's continue to pay it forward to the next generation of athletes and, continue building up that mental performance.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, Brandon. Thanks again. Talk to you.